Hi everyone, welcome to the October Lunchtime Chat with Sandy. The topic today is on research. It could be called From Bench to Bedside, or Why the Heck Does Drug Development Take So Long? Or under the topic, Why Does It Take So Long to Go from Mouse to Man? Well, guys, just so you know, I have really struggled with this topic. I know, I'm the one who chose it, so I don't have anyone to blame but myself. Don't get me wrong, it's not because there isn't enough research going on that I couldn't find anything to talk about. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. There is so much going on that I can't possibly cover it all, and I really didn't even know where to start. So in terms of where to start, just a reminder that if you have questions during the presentation, you can email your questions to my CEO, that's Debbie Davis, and that's DEBBIE.DAVIS at Parkinson, PARKINSON.ca. Or if you want to ask me any further questions, my number is 416-227-3375. I won't be back at my desk, obviously, until a little later this afternoon, but I will certainly get back to you and answer your call as quickly as I can. So, back to research. The truth of the matter is that there are some promising leads being followed by scientists and physicians into developing new treatments for people with Parkinson's. But the pace of research is excruciatingly slow. I know that statement is not going to be hard for many of you to believe, but the truth is that given the number of obstacles that have to be overcome along the way of progress into the management of Parkinson's, actually progress has been relatively rapid. I will talk later about some of the new approaches to therapy, but first I want to explain the steps that must be followed to develop discovery into therapy. I realize that some of what I'm about to share with you might be a bit boring and tedious, and even when I'm finished with this part of my talk, some of you will still argue that the current process takes too long. Undoubtedly, some efforts could probably be made towards streamlining some of the steps, but there is a danger in taking shortcuts and short-circuiting the process, as drugs or any therapies with questionable effectiveness of safety could be put on the market. Parkinson's is difficult enough to live with, even with the gold standard of medication available, such as levodopa. The last thing any of you would want is a medication that could actually make things worse. So there must be a careful balance between scientific progress and patient safety. To begin with, progress can be made only through trial and error. Multiple tests and the painstaking demonstration that a new drug, a new surgical procedure, or a new complementary therapy, for that matter, for the treatment of Parkinson's is both safe and effective. So there has to be collaboration and continual interaction between scientists who conduct basic research and clinical researchers who are physicians, as there is a delicate balancing act between the urgency to discover new treatments and the need to avoid posing a risk to the patient. Proceeding with caution and paying attention to every detail is essential, but very time-consuming at the same time. There also has to be a balance between the vast financial investment required to carry out research, as well as the potential for a windfall profit from making an important discovery. So what do we mean by the term basic research? Basic research involves working at the cellular level. That is to say, using various types of cell in a culture, in a petri dish, in a laboratory. Just exactly what the name infers. It's very basic. It is also the term used when working in living animals. The basic research I'm talking about is the biological sciences. These are the sciences that deal with living beings and life processes. So let's say that the researchers working with cells in the laboratory come up with a new understanding of a fundamental biological process, but they have no idea if their discovery will have a practical or clinical application, i.e., a relationship to the disease they are studying. So at this point, well, at this very basic level, no one has any idea if what looks promising in a lab will actually have any relevance at the end of the day for people living with Parkinson's. So, is it worth the thousands of hours, the huge amount of effort, and the millions and sometimes billions of dollars it has taken just to get this far when no one knows if it will eventually be of any benefit to people with Parkinson's? I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about and let you decide for yourselves. Back in the 1950s, researchers were examining cow brains and investigating the chemical compositions of those brains. Well, no one could have predicted what was going to happen next and where this basic research was going to lead. But, lo and behold, guess what? A new understanding of the possible role of dopamine in the brain was discovered in looking at these cow brains, because the researchers, those are the scientists, found that dopamine occurs in high concentrations in the deep structures of the cow brain, in particular the areas that are concerned with normal walking and movement. So by now, I'm hoping you can see where I'm going with this, as this finding subsequently led to the discovery that dopamine levels are reduced in the same area of the brains of people with Parkinson's, and eventually to replacement therapy with levodopa. So, was it worth all the time, effort, and money? You be the judge. I know what my answer is. This is one of the best examples of serendipity that I can think of. For those of you who may not be familiar with that term, serendipity, it is the gift of finding valuable things when you're not looking for them, and as a result, when you least expect them. Who would have thought that looking at cow brains would lead to the reason you can walk today? So, do we have to rely on serendipity for all our scientific discoveries? No. Important breakthroughs have also come from careful planning and following a hunch based on interesting scientific clues. Basic research is funded by the government, as well as organizations such as Parkinson Society Canada, the Michael J. Fox Foundation, as well as many other organizations. As with everything else these days, there is a lot of competition for funding, and researchers today are being asked to demonstrate in advance a strong likelihood that their research project will lead to the development of practical applications, although, as I have already mentioned, it is often difficult to tell in advance whether this will prove to be the case. Remember that I told you that both basic research and clinical research are collaborative efforts between the scientists and the physicians? So this answers part of the question about where do scientists get their ideas about what basic research they should be focused on. They talk to the doctors, who highlight the practical needs of their patients And then the scientist is motivated to come up with a research project which will lead to the development of a practical application for this problem. So, when basic research leads to a discovery with potential for a treatment that may help people with Parkinson's, now the investigators use animals to determine whether a new treatment is safe and effective for testing in humans. In other words, animals are used to test two things. Does the treatment work? And is it toxic? In particular, drugs have to be tested to see if they might damage such organs as the liver, kidney, or heart, or even might have the potential to cause cancer. But this is just the beginning. When you read an article or hear on television that a new drug has been found to improve symptoms in an animal model of Parkinson's disease, what you may not realize is that the drug will not be available for clinical trials in people with Parkinson's for several more years. Even if a drug is found to be both safe and effective in animals, and also safe and effective when tried on Parkinson's patients, many years of human testing is still needed before the regulatory agency, i.e. Health Canada, approves the drug for use in humans. By now, I'm sure the statistics I'm about to quote won't come as a huge surprise, as the process of drug development is obviously extremely long and complicated, not to mention enormously expensive. Estimates for moving a drug from bench to bedside, or from mouse to man, range in costs from approximately $250 million to $1.5 billion and require an average of 10 to 15 years to complete. I'm going to repeat that because I think those numbers are very important when it comes to understanding why research takes such a long time. Estimates for moving a drug from bench to bedside, in other words, from what looks promising in a petri dish in a lab to going to then the animal models, mice in many cases, to then human trials on man, can range in cost from $250 million to $1.5 billion and require, on average, 10 to 15 years to complete. Only 1 in every 1,000 drugs tested in the lab ever make it to the marketplace. And even those that advance to clinical trials have only a 1 in 5 success rate. Again, keep in mind that the extremely rigorous regulations that Health Canada imposes are there to ensure that drugs are safe and effective, and you wouldn't want it any other way. In other words, you want to ensure that the drugs are safe as well as effective before you put it in your mouth. The biggest problem in clinical trials is actually the lack of patients who sign up for those trials. So if you're interested in the possibility of getting involved in a clinical trial, I'm going to give you some information a little later about how to do that, and I can also send you a bit of information about what a clinical trial involves. If a drug passes the toxicological test, that is the safe test, i.e., if it is found not to do any damage to the organs of the animals it has been tested on, it now moves on to be tested in normal, healthy, young volunteers. These tests on humans are called clinical trials. So the first tests in healthy individuals are once again done to evaluate safety only and are known as Phase 1 studies. Investigators are conducting trials for the pharmaceutical company sponsoring the research, and they are looking for adverse side effects, such as causing low blood pressure, increased heart rate, excessive nausea, or dizziness, all of which would make the drug unsafe for use in patients. At least 20 and up to 100 healthy volunteers are needed for Phase 1. If the drug passes the testing in healthy volunteers, it moves into something called the investigational stage of tests, and a relatively small 100 to 500 people who volunteer for this number of people with Parkinson's. So again, after Phase 1, the drug moves into the initial stages of tests in a relatively small, possibly anywhere between 1 and 500 patients who volunteer, and that's the number of people with Parkinson's that the drugs are tested on next. These trials are known as Phase 2 studies, and they are conducted under very carefully controlled conditions. And the focus is to observe the effectiveness and side effects of the medications. In order to observe patients in Phase 2, patients are required to make frequent visits to the clinic where the drug trial is taking place in order to be monitored through all steps of the research. A drug that passes both Phase 1 and Phase 2 using close monitoring for both safety and effectiveness may proceed to larger multi-institutional clinical trials, usually in different parts of the world. This is known as Phase 3 and requires anywhere between at least 500 up to and including 10,000 patient volunteers. And once again, the drug is being observed again for effectiveness and side effects over a long period of time. So, if a drug successfully passes through stages 1, stages 2, and stage 3 of the clinical trial, i.e., if the pharmaceutical company has shown that the drug is both safe and effective, theoretically it should be available for people with Parkinson's, right? Not so fast, unfortunately. Now, Health Canada gets in on the act. A new drug submission is filed with Health Canada, and this regulatory agency reviews all the extensive data collected from the trials to ensure that the trials were done properly. Also, to see if the analyses are valid, and again, whether the drug has any serious side effects or unacceptable risk. After much deliberation and scrutiny, Health Canada issues a ruling on whether a drug is approved and whether it can now be prescribed for people living with Parkinson's. So, in summary, the topic of why the heck does drug development take so long, or why does it take so long from going to mouse to man, here is a short recap. The entire procedure from the discovery of a biological process that may be relevant and important to a disease process through all the animal and human studies and then approved by Health Canada takes an average of 15 years and $1 billion for a single new drug. Again, I think that is worth repeating. The entire procedure from the discovery of a biological process, that's the one that takes place in the lab that I talked about, that may be relevant and important to a disease process treatment perspective, going through all the animal and human studies, and then approval by Health Canada takes an average of at least 15 years and $1 billion for a single new drug. A lot of years and a lot of money must be spent ensuring that the drug has both the best possible chance of being effective for the disease as well as the lowest possible chance of causing any harm to the patient with Parkinson's. Some of you may be saying, that's ridiculous. That's far too long, and it's a waste of both time and money. As I mentioned earlier, taking shortcuts could mean that medications that are not helpful or worse, are detrimental to your health could be put on the market. Not something any of you would want. I'm sure of that. Also, to put things into perspective, if research had not been conducted on a new possible potential drug called levodopa, where would you be without it today? This research was conducted back in the 1960s when clinical trials were first made available on people living with Parkinson's for levodopa. And where would you be without it today? The answer is, you wouldn't be anywhere without it. So keep that in mind. Time does not permit me to go into detail about this today, but please believe me when I say that it took years of trial and error to get the levodopa, which is either the Cinemet or Prolopa, which I'm sure most of you are taking today, so that you take for granted today. It took years to get it right so that it was both safe and effective. So I think you will all agree that research is absolutely necessary. Another major obstacle that some researchers face today is the lack of volunteers who are willing to participate in clinical trials. This is something that I wasn't really aware of until 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't realize that many clinical trials never even get off the ground due to lack of volunteers who are willing to participate in them. So research is really inhibited because of lack of people willing to participate in clinical trials. As most of you know, I've been here for a long time, and I have known how important clinical trials are as the final and crucial step of the path to developing better drug treatments, including drugs, for Parkinson's patients today. What I did not know, however, until recently, as I've just mentioned, is that approximately 85%, that's 85% of trials, face significant delays, and 30% of trials never even get off the ground because of a lack of volunteers, resulting in a dramatic slowdown in progress toward a cure. Participating in clinical trials allows you also to have access to some of the newest and most innovative drugs available, although there is no guarantee that the treatment will work. Volunteers participate in research in the hope of helping others, however, and these volunteers are contributing to drug development. Another thing to keep in mind is that there are all kinds of research. Everything from clinical drug trials that I've been talking about today to things like the non-invasive questionnaires, trials of various devices, just to name a few. Again, if you would like more information, you can call me for a pamphlet, a brochure, and various links to various trials that you can call on, or you can call one of the nurses at Toronto Western Hospital Movement Disorder Centre, who will walk you through some information about clinical trials that might be available for you to participate in. You could call Julie So, that's Julie. Julie's last name is So, S-O. Her number at Toronto Western is 416-603-5875, and her extension is number 3. Even though there is no ongoing or current clinical trial that is appropriate for you right now, your name will be kept on file for future trials. Also, you can go to our website, which is www.parkinsonCNO.ca, and under the Support and Education tab menu at the top, you can click on Resources from the left-hand menu, and you will see Clinical Trials Information. I will send you the direct link. All you need to do is ask. So, now that you have all that straight, let's look at some of the primary avenues of research into Parkinson's. One of the most frequently asked questions we receive is, how did I get Parkinson's? Or, what causes Parkinson's? The answer is simply, we do not know, but we're working hard to try and figure it out. This has been one of the primary focuses of research right from day one, because once you know what causes something, you can cure it. And after all, that's the ultimate goal of research. What research has shown us so far is that Parkinson's is not caused exclusively by a person's genetic makeup or exclusively by an environmental toxin. So research into the rate of occurrence, where it is occurring within a population, as well as genetics, that's when you're trying to figure out if there's a specific gene responsible for Parkinson's in the general population. This information is still inconclusive, but the good news is that researchers have discovered new genes over the past few years that have led to rethinking the possible genetic basis of Parkinson's. Added to this is the fact that it is now possible to study the entire human genome. So who knows what clues will come from all of this. Another very important aspect of research that comes under the umbrella of the topic of causes of Parkinson's is that of finding out what causes progressive nerve cell damage and death. Why do cells die? So let's go back to the drawing board here for a minute in order to explain what I'm talking about. So you all know that movement is controlled by a chemical in the brain called dopamine, and that dopamine is a messenger whose job it is to carry signals from one nerve cell, called a neuron, to another. You also know that the motor symptoms of Parkinson's, the tremor, the slowness of movement, the stiffness or rigidity of movement, etc., appear when a significant proportion, somewhere between 60 to 80% of dopamine-producing cells have already died off. So it stands to reason then that if researchers could figure out why dopamine cells get sick and die, scientists could develop treatments to stop or prevent the loss of dopamine-producing cells. Just think about that for a minute. This is the arm of research that I personally get the most excited about. So pardon me if it sounds like I'm coming through the phone at you, because what I'm talking about is research into neuroprotection, protection of neurons. Neuroprotection refers to the concept that a drug might be discovered that would be capable of stopping or at least slowing down progression of the disease process. Like I said, just think about this for a minute. If I was to ask you this question, would your life be so difficult if, from the day of diagnosis, regardless of when that was, your symptoms didn't get any worse? So, from the time you first heard the words, "You have Parkinson's," if nothing else had changed from that day to this, I'm sure your answer would be no. My life would not be difficult if, indeed, my Parkinson's had not gotten any worse. I'm sure your answer would be no. That would have been okay. It's the fact that my symptoms have slowly but surely gotten worse over time. That's what I mean by progression. That's what makes things tough. Again, so if at your first appointment with the doctor, he said, "You have Parkinson's, and here is a medication that will stop you from getting any worse." If such a drug existed, we wouldn't need to know what caused your Parkinson's in order to alter its progress. So the hope is that a neuroprotective drug would slow down the clock so that your symptoms that you're currently expected to appear after 5, even to 10 years would not appear even for 15 to 20 years. Currently, no such drug does exist. But this is the whole question that is being asked and why we need to understand why cells die off in the first place. That's what I'm leading to here. It gives me great pleasure to tell you that Parkinson's Society's National Research Program, that's our Parkinson's Society National Research Program, is currently funding researchers into the chemical or genetic triggers that start the cell death process. So if you ever ask yourself if Parkinson's Society funds important research that might one day lead to a cure, the answer is yes, we do. And we are very proud of our research programs. There is a small, easy-to-understand and read booklet about the various research projects Parkinson's Society is currently funding. It's available to you just for the ask. Call me or write to me, and I'll be happy to send one to you. Another promising type of research that has garnered a lot of interest is the identification of something called biomarkers. What the heck are biomarkers? What does that word mean? Well, right now, we have to wait for Parkinson's to let us know that it is there. So, until you develop a tremor, until you become very slow or very stiff and don't understand what's going on and you finally seek medical advice, again, you don't know, nor do we, nor do the researchers or the physicians know whether or not you have Parkinson's. So biomarkers would allow us to detect the very early stages of Parkinson's so that people could start treatments before nerve cell loss takes place and motor symptoms appear. Wouldn't that be nice? Biomarkers, that's markers to let us know that Parkinson's is there before you know about it, could also identify people at risk of developing Parkinson's and improve diagnosis and determine which treatment will work the best. One area of immense research right now is the use of new types of imaging in order to be able to see the brain. You will no doubt have heard of PET scans, that's PET scans, or SPECT scans, that's S-P-E-C-T scans, and as well as new approaches to MRI. So, how will being able to see the brain help? The research into each of these techniques may lead to a test for the diagnosis of Parkinson's, may provide more accurate information about the progress of the information in an individual, and may also help to distinguish and separate the various cousins of Parkinson's, such as differentiating between what I call garden variety Parkinson's disease and other conditions known as PSP, MSA, and CBD, the acronyms for some of these atypical Parkinson's conditions. So we know that our current medications, such as levodopa, do improve the symptoms of the disease. They do not alter the progression. Current medications are not perfect and certainly leave room for improvement. New medications are currently being investigated all the time, and research is looking into several areas where medications need to be improved. So some of these areas of new and improved medications and their effectiveness, I'm going to list those now. One is, of course, improved effectiveness. 2, fewer and less side effects, such as dyskinesia, hallucinations, dizziness, and problems with sleepiness, just to name a few. Research is looking into better drugs to control tremor, freezing while walking, loss of balance, and motor fluctuations, those awful ons and offs, where when your medication is working, you can move quite freely just as you would like to. But when your medication is not working, you may be stuck, very rigid, and stuck in a position for any length of time. Research is looking into effective treatment of the non-motor symptoms, such as better control of constipation, depression, urinary problems, speech problems, and sexual dysfunction. These problems often do not respond well to current medications, so research into drug therapy for these symptoms definitely needs to be improved, as they all have a very serious impact on your quality of life with Parkinson's. Cognitive dysfunction is one of the most difficult problems to treat when it comes to Parkinson's disease, and there is certainly an urgent need for improved therapies in this area. Many of you have attended our education sessions on the new form of levodopa administration called duodopa. If you would like more information about this new medication, which has come because those research, it flew past all of those, I won't say flew because it moved slowly, so that was not a good use of the word, but it went through all the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, and is now available for some people with Parkinson's disease. If you'd like more information about duodopa, please go to our website. There is an excellent video under the education link, where you would go to www.parkinsoncno.ca. Then you click on the education link, and then click again on PDTV for a video all about this new and innovative procedure that is available for some people living with Parkinson's. Research into surgical procedures continue to be investigated as well. There is no doubt that deep brain stimulation surgery has been an enormous advance in the treatment of Parkinson's disease. And now there is new criteria available Basically, it is being done sooner rather than later, as it used to be considered a last research or a last resort, but now that is no longer the case, and therefore individuals can really benefit from it without having to be so progressed in order to be able to be assessed for the specific criteria. There is no point in having the ability to walk if your muscles have atrophied. So the new criteria is also discussed on our website, again, under the PDTV link that I just told you about. So both the new form of receiving your levodopa, that's the duodopa procedure, and the new criteria for DBS is also available on PDTV. Research is also being done into exercise and rehabilitation therapy. As I have mentioned several times in previous talks, doctors and other healthcare professionals, in particular physiotherapists, know that exercise is an essential component in living well with Parkinson's. For those of you who exercise on a regular basis, you know this too, as you know how much better you feel when you do your exercises, or how much stiffer and slower you are when you are doing them, even for one day. The truth is that it is only recently that exercise has been recognized as an important part of the management of Parkinson's. So for those of you out there who do regular exercises and for whom the benefits of exercise seem obvious and intuitive, you are wondering, so why has this realization taken so long? I think it's a combination of the fact that there has been less funding for research into the non-pharmacological processes or treatments. In other words, most of the funding in the past has gone into developing new medications, for example, as well as there has been less medical training in the use of exercise and its importance. But that is changing now. 90% of the research into exercise and rehabilitation has actually been performed within the last 10 years. So this information is now coming to fruition, and we know, thanks to research, as well as to your own anecdotal reports, just how important and vital research and exercise is. Things are different now, however. Most neurologists are actually recommending exercise for all their patients with Parkinson's. Along with that, more opportunities for various types of physical activities are popping up all the time, including yoga, tai chi, and dance. So while there are many gaps in the understanding of the effects of exercise, including what types of exercise are the most effective in Parkinson's? How much exercise do you need to do to be able to show some benefit? What symptoms respond best to exercise? Is exercise beneficial to all stages of Parkinson's? And what types of exercise are the most effective at different stages of Parkinson's? Does exercise actually slow the progress of Parkinson's? So while some of these questions are still unanswered gaps, the good news is there is ongoing research studies looking into these and many more questions about the importance and benefits of exercise. So while we await the results of ongoing research into these benefits of exercise, what exercises are the most beneficial for people living with Parkinson's? And if indeed there is one over the other that is more helpful, why don't you do your own research? Find an exercise you enjoy doing, whether it's walking, aerobic exercise, using light weights, using a treadmill, a stationary bicycle, doing Tai Chi. There are too many options to be able to list them all. Just keep moving and see if you notice that regular exercise makes a difference in your ability to perform your regular daily activities. If you struggle to get on and off the toilet, climb in and out of a car, get in and out of bed, get out of a chair, or up off a couch, don't just wait for the medication to help with all of those things. You may be waiting for a long time. Give your meds a helping hand and supplement your medication therapy with exercise therapy. Just as doctors, and in particular, movement disorder specialists can tell you which patients are physically active and do regular exercise versus those patients who don't, you will see the difference in yourself too. So, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And again, if you don't use it, you will lose it. It's your choice. Oh, and one other thing. I forgot to mention exercising the mind. Cognitive training or brain training exercises tend to be forgotten or overlooked form of exercise, but there is an increasing number of research studies on this type of exercise and its real-world benefits. Last but not least today, I want to touch on complementary therapies and the lack of research into the benefit of things like mindfulness meditation, massage therapy, acupuncture, etc. Any therapy that increases your comfort, does not endanger you, and doesn't cost you an arm and a leg may be beneficial to you. It's complementary, not alternative. So, unlike all the years and billions of dollars that are spent researching medications to prove or disprove whether or not they are safe and effective, the lack of research into complementary therapies means that alternative therapies can be marketed and made available without any scientific proof of effectiveness or proof as to whether or not they are safe for you to use. Does that mean you should not use any complementary therapies? No, I'm not talking about that, and I really don't mean that. But just because a treatment makes logical or emotional sense does not mean that it works. So, be guided by 1. Your understanding that there is no proof that a complementary therapy will help due to lack of research. 2. As long as it does not bankrupt you. That's what I meant by costing you an arm and a leg. 3. As long as your family doctor or neurologist is aware of your plan to use the therapy, because there could be some other aspect about your medical history that may make it dangerous for you to engage in a complementary therapy. And 4, if the treatment makes you feel better. Those are all things to be guided by when it comes to complementary therapy. If you want to try it, given the above parameters that I've just gone over with you, then go for it. Keep in mind that there are many scam artists out there who prey on vulnerable people. So if you see something, or hear about something, or read something that is too good to be true, it probably is. So buyer beware. If you want to check on something or check something out, just give us a call and we'll let you know what we can find out for you. Many clients get upset with their doctors when they poo-poo complementary therapy in general. Doctors are really concerned when they see their patients and their families turn to unrealistic and far-fetched and expensive treatments just because they are desperate to feel better. So if your doctor is skeptical or critical about a new therapy you've heard about, keep in mind they have your best interest at heart and are basing their response on their knowledge and concern about the lack of scientific data about the treatment. In conclusion today and in summation, the type of therapy most people have in mind when they speak of a cure for Parkinson's is known as neurorestorative or neuroregenerative therapy. And those big words mean any therapy or treatment that will reverse the damage in the brain, replace the damaged tissue, or restore normal function in the areas of the brain of a person with Parkinson's. Are we there yet? No, we're not. But it's very important to understand a great deal of both basic and clinical research is taking place in this area as we speak. And in the meantime, while we await this huge breakthrough, I hope that after today's talk, you will have a much better understanding about what the word research means. It means careful, painstaking examinations of new possible medications, the fact that the discovery is very long, usually 15 plus years, and very expensive, usually more than $1 billion for each new medication that comes to market. Hoping that later today, when you put the next little yellow Cinemet pill or your capsule of Prolopa in your mouth, you will say, yes, but it's worth every minute and every penny, and thank goodness for our wonderful researchers. I haven't received any questions regarding this topic today, so I'm going to end for now. Again, you can get more information. You can get more information by calling me 416-227-3375 or contacting my executive director, Debbie Davis, at debบี้.davis, DAVIS, at parkinsoncno.ca. Sorry guys, it's my first day back from education. And from education, I can't even talk. It's actually my first day back from vacation. And can you tell? My brain is still in the Maritimes. I'm here in body, but not mind, obviously. Anyway, love you guys. See you in November. At that time, I'm planning to talk about what happens or what you should do when your Parkinson's symptoms suddenly get worse. Again, what to do when your Parkinson's symptoms suddenly get worse. That's my plan for my topic for November, but if you have a topic that you'd really like me to talk about, I haven't started my November presentation yet, so if you have something and a burning desire to learn about something that we haven't talked about already this year, you know how to get me. I'm happy to change my mind about my topic for November. Take care, everybody. I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving, and I'm thankful for all of you. Take care. Bye.
The leader has turned lecture off, and your lines have been unmuted.